Pushkin.
Hey y'all, it's Justin Richmond. Today we have Beach House on the show, the Baltimore indie band known for their cinematic, psychedelic songs. They're one of those bands that manages to envelop you in a sonic landscape when they play. Victoria Legrand and Alex Scally have a very special musical chemistry. Their 2006 self-titled debut was a moving collection of lo-fi songs built around Victoria's dreamy vocals and synth-based loops, topped with Alex's lush guitar riffs. The songs have since been sampled by artists like Kendrick Lamar and The Weeknd, and Kanye West even recently posted a picture of himself collaborating with them on Instagram. The band's new album debuted at number 1, and it's their first entirely self-produced album and also the most dynamic in scope. They tell Broken Record producer Leah Rose on today's episode about the inner workings of their unique creative partnership. They also talk about how the warmth of Bob Marley's music has directly inspired the band, and they explain why sometimes you have to just get over yourself for the sake of show business. This is Broken Record, liner notes for the digital age. I'm Justin Richmond. Here's Leah Rose with Victoria Legrand and Alex Scally of Beach House.
So thank you guys so much for doing this. I guess by the time this comes out, you guys are going to be back on the road, which must be super exciting, hopefully, and not terrifying. What's it been like being off the road during the pandemic? 'Cause you guys have been on tour for like 15 years straight, pretty much, right?
Yeah, it's been totally strange to not be out in the world, but I think everybody can relate to that. But touring has been a huge part of our career and, inspiration and all that stuff. So we're very excited.
Yeah, humans are really inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
Strangers are really inspiring. And the situation of shows, both as playing and as a spectator, is just so beautiful. So it's been, I think everyone feels this way. It's been insane not having that as a regular part of life for 2.5 years or 3 years, however long it's been that we've been in this fugue state.
How are you thinking about the live show now that you're about to go back out with the new album out? Have you made any big changes to the show?
We're kind of picking up where we left off from the 7 tour because it was just we really liked how it developed over the tour. So we're picking up there, and we just spent a lot of weeks actually in pre-production with our whole crew. It was really, really fun. And it's basically an advanced level of the last show, but we've spent a lot of time because we didn't want it to have to develop on the road. We wanted it to be like the fully realized version of itself at show 1.
How do you guys get in the mood to play a show once you're out on tour and you're in the thick of it? If you wake up and you're just kind of feeling off, like physically off or mentally off, how do you get yourself in a place where you're ready to stand in front of a crowd and do what you have to do for an hour and 45 minutes?
It's called You Have To. It's called Grow Up. It's show business. It's called, look, it's not anyone else's fault. You stayed up till 5 a.m. Get yourself together and do it. It's like you have a job, but it's not like a 9-to-5 job, but it's a responsibility. And you have, worked your butt off to put this thing together. And we're lucky people who get to have people come, see them, listen to them.
Yeah.
But just from the specifics point of view, one thing you have to remind yourself on the road, and we do remind ourselves of this, is yes, this is your 3rd show in a row, but this is the first time you've played in Cincinnati in 5 years, and be in the moment and realize that this could be a special night for some of your fans who have never seen you before. And it's just
get out. It's go beyond yourself. It's not about you. It's that's what I was trying to say, is that it's a show and it's other people, and it's not about you. And there is something militaristic in the sense of touring is, you do wear your body down and you do lose sleep and you do feel crazily destroyed at the end of it, but it should be because you gave all of yourself to people, and that's what it should be like.
Yeah, and also we listen to music. We have various things we do before the show to get into the moment.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys play the same show every night? Is it the same set list?
No, we vary it for sanity. It's just always been that way for us. And so, our set is usually about an hour, 45 minutes. And that for us is usually between 18 and 20 songs. And as the tour goes on, usually because we're still learning, the first week will be kind of similar sets. But then we start peppering in deeper cuts. And we have a thing on our website called the Setlist Creator, where you choose the date of the show you're going to, and then you can enter your top 3 choices.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, and it was just something we've always wanted to do, and it's really fun because we consult it daily. And, obviously there's songs we'll play most nights, but for maybe the deeper in our catalog song, we'll use that to find which song it should be for a given show.
So I want to talk about the band's formative years. And you guys have been making music together now for close to 20 years?
Well, we met in 2004, and our first song was written in 2005. So I guess it's about 17 years.
17 years. I guess when you guys came together and formed the band, what was the original thought for the aesthetic of the band?
I don't think we were going for an aesthetic. I think that our becoming a band was really about 2 people who met each other and immediately started making music out of necessity.
Mm-hmm.
I was introduced to Alex through a friend that I had, met in college who was a musician who lived in Baltimore. And then I meet Alex, and then pretty much from that moment, start playing music with him. And then a couple months later, he and I are hanging out, and we are making Saltwater from the first, which would be, the first song we ever wrote together, and also on the first record. So the aesthetic of what we're doing is not the first thing that happened. So this journey started because of, music first. And then as we made sounds and made songs, we started to discover the look of the first record.
But just to give you an idea of our creative process. So the sound of Beach House when we started was Victoria had 2 keyboards, and she liked the way they sounded. Why did she find those keyboards? You're naturally drawn to things. They were nothing special. I had, a guitar I was borrowing from someone, and these organs that I was collecting. And we used a 4-track tape machine, which I had been using since I was 12 years old. I love 4-track tape machines. So we just had these things. They were our inherent interests. And there was no I think we should sound like this. There was no option. There was 0 option of what we would sound like. It was just so natural. And there was no we're going to be a band. There was no forethought, no pretense, no vision. It was just one foot going in front of the other. And it felt very, very natural.
Yeah, it seems like that's the way that you make music as well. It's you don't think about a project before you start it. A project just starts, and then you just sort of keep up with the momentum, and it evolves into what it evolves into.
Yes, that's a good way of looking at it. And, I think that it was natural how we started working together, but then I think a lot of the things we made were out of necessity too, because of what we had around us, and it was all just kind of sitting right there.
It's so telling how you approach art, because if it were me, I feel like I would be so conscious of every single little thing. And I would be really thinking about the cover art, the name, the way the name looks in the font, everything would be so overly thought out. So it's so cool for me to hear that. It's you have your instruments that you have access to 2 keyboards, that's all it is. And you sit there and it just happens.
Yeah, it's that, but we do pay a lot of attention to the details. The fonts and the album art. So we're kind of 2 sides, But
it's generated from within.
Yeah, the whole universe of our aesthetic, which is an interesting word, comes from the inside. It comes from the hearth,
mm-hmm.
right? So the heat that is inside of the thing that creates the music. And it started from the first record. It was okay, this music, how does this make us feel? That's how we got our band name.
Mm-hmm.
The word Beach House came out, and there were other words attached to it and other types of words, and we were floating them around, but it came from, what is this feeling that we're creating? That's where we got Beach House. And then it was, what are the colors? What are the textures of this record? And the first record had all the jewels on the cover and the tones, and and then the font of the band name on that cover is my handwriting. I made that thing. And, and then every album since then has been the same type of process. We get our visual language from the music, and that is in itself intentional, because we're careful about it and extremely thoughtful.
Mm-hmm.
So the aesthetic world and all the details and all the care comes from the music.
I love hearing people try to describe your music. Like the New Yorker recently said that your music, they describe it as twilight mysticism.
Cool.
And I'm just curious, like, does that feel accurate?
That feels like somebody was using language in a very creative and imaginative way, which is super exciting, because twilight and light and that thing that the world gives to you as a human, like we live in the world and all we have to do is look at it to get an infinite amount of inspiration. And yeah, I love that. I mean, that person is accessing that part of living where they see something and it makes them think about something larger.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if anyone who's not moved by Twilight is essentially insane, because it's like, you know, the world that we see all day long just becomes this incredibly beautiful place for a short amount of time. And it's just really, really wonderful.
What were some of like the foundational albums for you both? Like what were you listening to in high school? Like the first album where it's not something that's like playing in your parents' car or like an older sibling is listening to, it's like your album.
Me and my like high school crew got really political, which was awesome. And like, you know, it's like part of the way we were like becoming adults and forming our identity. But we got really into Bob Marley and just reggae in general. And I learned every bass line. I was a bassist first. I learned every bass line to every Bob Marley record at age 15 or 16. And it was so huge to us, and the political side of it. And it was so funny when I got to college, and it was shocking to me when I found out how a lot of people perceived Bob Marley as kind of playful, non-serious music, because I had had such a like kind of like formative political relationship with it and found it so crucial to like my identity and various things, and found his calls to be so beautiful and worthy.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and then just the sonic aspects of reggae and all of those Bob Marley records had a massive effect on the way I saw music and the way I heard it put together. And the warm tones mixed with the super serious message felt so powerful to me.
Where did you go after reggae?
Well, yes. I mean, that's just one step of things, but I also explored very heavily. I'm thinking of ones where I like learned every aspect of the music. I got really, really into all the Stevie Wonder records from the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that he self-produced. It's just such a great array of musicianship, but great songwriting, and it's eclectic. And I mean, those records are just incredible. Intervisions, Talking Book, Songs in the Key of Life, Fulfilling This is First Finale, that kind of stuff.
And then Victoria, what about you? What were some foundational or just early albums that you really gravitated towards?
You know, it's funny. I think that this might be like one of the things that maybe when Alex and I like started making music, we didn't realize that we probably we shared some total overlaps of what we were attracted to. Because I was going to say that, you know, there's your childhood music, but then I think for the albums that you fall in love with when you're a teenager, really, I think are some of the ones that profoundly affect you, you know, as the beginning of you becoming an adult. So like I was obviously into like Nirvana and Hole. I loved Hole. I still do.
Me too.
I liked Smashing Pumpkins. Siamese Dream is an amazing record. I also fell in love, you know, with somebody, your first like fall in love, and there was like Rastaman Vibration, and you know, like just that whole reggae world was part of my life too. And you know, Ravi Shankar, you know, like that song I Miss You. I mean, there's so many albums. So yeah, I think that there's some sharing of the glowing, warm, romantic, melodic, you know, the feelings all in this like kind of beautiful alchemy.
Mm-hmm. What did you especially like about Hole, about Courtney Love? I'm just curious.
Just it's just a powerful thing. Like if you're a young girl and you're listening to that, you're just like this woman, you know, this like force of nature. Yeah, it's just like once you hear it, you're just not the same, you know. And there's a lot of artists that are like that, you know. Nirvana's like that, and you know, there are a lot of people that once you hear them, you're not the same. Bob Marley, Yay, you know, there are a lot of people that are, you know, they just change you quickly. But yeah, her screaming, her voice, it's like there's just a unique quality to it. And also the music, the song's
Songwriting.
really great.
Yeah.
The songwriting is incredible. Live Through This is an incredible record.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to copy that for the rest of time. And everything. Talk about aesthetics. I mean, that whole thing is just like,
Yeah.
that is an incredible force of inspiration. The baby doll, there's the makeup, and it's coming from punk and post-punk and all that stuff, which also was a huge part of my upbringing. So there was a mixture of like the warm, gooey, the velvety layers, the velvet underground, and then there's also the reggae, and then it's just a whole combo of things. That's how my brain works. It kind of all combines into one. It's all one album. Just kidding.
Let's talk a little bit about Victoria, about how you have evolved as a singer over the years. How would you say that your voice has changed as your career has progressed?
There's a whole scientific way of talking about voice. That's one way of looking at it. And it's very factual. Like people's voices continue to change until they're like mid-40s and then obviously past then. But in terms of like people who use their voices in specific ways, I have always, when I start singing or I'm writing or all of that, I'm always just going from a place of what is comfortable to me. So it's not very like super self-conscious, but there are definitely things that I like to do with my voice and the way that it sounds. And I work from just that in-out world.
Mm-hmm.
When I listen to my voice over in, the past and various Beach House albums, like there are definitely like a range of vocal worlds all over the records. And I just feel like I continue to just kind of build on that, and go with the flow. But I do technically have classical training.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't lose my voice very often at all for whatever reason. I don't have problems with that. Probably just jinxed myself. Some singers do a lot of warm-ups and, 2 hours. And I don't know how, I can't do that. I'm very much like a shot of tequila, and that's my warm-up. Not to sound like I'm such a rocker, but that is kind of my attitude with it too.
Who were some of the first voices that you were really attracted to or really moved by?
Early on in my life, I was attracted to Michael Jackson. I was attracted to musicals. I was attracted to the official Phantom of the Opera musical, Sarah Brightman. Obviously everybody's loved Stevie Nicks at some point. I loved Chris Bell's voice. In my 20s, I've loved Tom Petty's voice. I've loved a lot of male voices, actually. And I'm, of course, forgetting them now because it's the video store effect where you go in and you're like, wait a minute, what's my favorite movie? I don't know.
Was there a period of time when you started out where you were emulating other people's voice?
I think that like just very subconsciously, I think I was probably all the men I've ever listened to, like in my life of any, artist. I was probably like in my own abstract way, like embodying all of the male voices that I was either subjected to or like bombarded with or really loved. When you start doing something, you're kind of just processing all of your inspirations all in one kind of like, this is a really crazy thing that just came into my head, but people who like make pasta, how like when pasta comes out in all of the holes and it's like all of the noodles, the desire to like make sound come out of your mouth, you're making something, right? But then all of the things you ever heard come out in all of those like strands. And that is your voice. Like your voice is like made up out of all of the things you've ever loved or been attracted to.
Mm-hmm.
Like how hard you want to be or how soft you want to be, or like you want to be like a man and a woman. You hear a lot of people, even male artists today like that kind of like sing and then you kind of can't tell if it's a girl or not, and that, that's probably always existed. There are male singers who want to sound more like a woman and there are female singers that don't want to sound like a woman. They want to sound more like a man. So it's just my description of the pasta is just more like about the shapes of things that are invisible.
It's a pleasing image.
Yeah, it's the processing of like all that comes before, and then the transference through something and becoming like multiple things.
Was there a moment when you knew that you found your voice? It seems like a really, really hard place to get to. But do you remember when you sort of realized like, okay, this is me?
I mean, I honestly think that like when Alex and I made Saltwater, like the very first song, like I do feel like the beginning of me and like my identity as a singer definitely is in the first album.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody's albums that come before them, they're younger. It's that Mitch Hedberg joke, like, what is this is a picture of me when I was younger. He's like, yes, every picture of you is you when you were younger. And so every album is you when you were younger. But yeah, I think that it started right at the beginning. I feel like there just was the desire and the 4-track and the, the crappiness and just the kind of like innocence.
Do you revisit the old albums ever? I mean, I know you're playing songs when you're on tour, but do you ever sit down with the old albums, listen to them and sort of like think about them and how they sort of like fit into your evolution as a band?
That, to be very honest, no. We don't sit and listen to our albums because we kind of know what we did. And so it's like, it's in there somewhere. And, there are the things we like and there are things we don't like. And we just kind of move on. But every once in a while, we'll hear our song somewhere. Like, years ago, we heard a song from the very first record. And I didn't even, people were talking and it was a dark, crowded bar. Didn't recognize ourselves. And sometimes that's a really cool moment where you hear something that you did. And for a brief few moments, you just don't, you go out of your body and you're not you anymore. And you're hearing your thing for the thing that you made it the way other people hear it.
Did you like it?
Yeah. I did. And at first, and it made me revisit a song that I hadn't looked at on a record. I think it was Home Again from the first album. Second album. See, this is proof of memory not working. From the first record. It's from Devotion. So yeah, it made me revisit it. Not the whole thing, but that song. So that does happen, but sometimes it's just a song. And like, or you'll see something like on the internet or something and it'll be like, oh, that song. Oh, and then you remember that or you listen to it. But as far as listening to a whole album, I think we'd have to get pretty drunk for that.
Well, like
just to like, lighten the fact that
it just brings a lot of, I think nostalgia is a really crazy thing. All humans experience it. And it feels like almost sickening, when you're with like a friend and you can't stop thinking about the beautiful moments that passed. It's like a trap. Like you want to keep going there, but then it's dark because it's not life anymore. Brings to mind the Great Gatsby, like, what do you mean you can't repeat the past? Of course you can. That urge that we all have to go back, but it's never coming back, So there's this thing that like, it's a scary place to go revisit your past self because you can get lost in dark things. Was I better then? Was I more pure? Or even the opposite thing? I was terrible. Like, I can't believe we put this out. Like things like, there's just so many scary feelings that can come back.
I think having too much self-awareness, there's the good kind of self-awareness. Like, am I being kind? Am I kind? Am I blah, 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 but then there's the bad self-awareness that can be crippling. And if you're too self-conscious, then you won't be able to move forward. You won't be able to plunge into something new. You'll just be so mentally conscious of, I did this and then this and this is what I look like. And then you're just like trapped in your own hell. And I think the whole idea is that it's about risk taking.
Yeah.
And it's not about like, I made this huge risk and it's like risks can be really small moments. It's like a small little pivot and there you went, and you just let go. And I think it's just like you did the past, you did the things, but you let them go. And putting out a record is that. It's like at the end of the day, like we decide that it is finished and it is gone. And, the release date comes and it's like the bird flies out of the cage, is freed. And hopefully, it was a beautiful bird. It was an intense bird. It required a lot of like special seeds and flowers and things, but it's got to go. And that is a small movement, but it is a large liberating one. And I think that's kind of the way we've been rolling.
Is that process at the very end a tough one? Does it take a lot of time and thought and energy and sort of like an executive call to be like, all right, we're calling it. This is the end of the album. It's done.
The end stage of an album is like the most difficult one because it is like the labor that lasts you don't know how long it's going to last, but you know that you want it to get out, and it can be quite painful, quite challenging. You can become sick of yourself and and bored or whatever the thing. So it's the hardest one, but it takes endurance and commitment and belief and just
faith.
A lot of faith, because there's a lot of like moments where you've been working 8 hours and you go, I hate it. I hate this. This is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to know that it's just your brain just like malfunctioning, and you have to, get through to the next day, wake up with a fresh mind and start again. It's like kind of, it's just so intense, but really beautiful.
Yeah.
You try to make the best out of what you can do and work on something a little bit every day. And then with time, maybe it'll grow into a beautiful flower. You never know. It might take 3 days, it might take 6 months, it might take 15 years, and it might take your entire life to make the thing that you maybe are the most proud of.
Cool. And the New Yorker called the new album your most ambitious and dynamic. So is that something that you agree with?
Thank you, New Yorker, for saying that. It's nice. It's nice to hear.
Do you feel like that's a fair assessment?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, we tried to have it be this really big, open world that you could really enter and get lost in. So I think in that desire, there is some more ambition than perhaps, or is that what they said? Ambitious? Dynamic and ambitious. Yeah. So I think the dynamic refers to, there's a lot of different song types. Like there are some.
There's also the production and ranges.
We've got really into production. It's just, I think this is a representation of the skills we've developed over many years.
And perhaps like a beginning of like pushing more in various ways. So, to hear the words dynamic, to hear the words ambitious, those are true. We were like very ambitious about the quantity of songs we started with. And, once we started it, there were times maybe we were like in over our heads, but we kept going. And I think that, ambition is tricky because it starts you off, but then there's this sense of like completing what you've started, and you don't know where you're going to end up. So I think that they're not wrong about describing it that way.
How do you guys feel about interviews generally? Do you kind of like dread it, or like what's the overall feeling? Just curious.
The overall feeling is it's not something we take for granted. It's very like, the best interviews are a conversation. You are a little awkward at the beginning, and then you kind of warm up, and then you're flowing together. I think the hardest part about interviews is and not all of them, but sometimes when you've made something like a record over 3 years, and then suddenly you, the artist, are like, okay, well, how will I explain in like a couple sentences years of my life? That's the hardest part. I think it's like how to articulate hours, days, months, years of like the worst day of your life or the best day. And I don't know I don't want to say package it, but how to relay that, how to convey that, and not feel like you're leaving out something that is crucial, that somebody would find interesting. But we're very lucky to be doing interviews and very grateful.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we cherish it because, we don't take it for granted, and we're grateful that people care at all. But I think we also take it as an opportunity to hopefully clarify some of our thoughts and visions for some people who might care.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we necessarily see it as like an exposure thing, just because we're not that commercially driven, but we see it as a chance for more creativity and cool things to happen.
And there are artists who, and like, every artist has the right to decide like how they're going to relay or describe their career or their art that they make. Some people don't like to do them at all. And for us, we're not really comfortable with not doing interviews at all, because we think that for how we are as people, we don't want to be cold, and we're not cold, and we don't want to block people out. We want to have a conversation. And it is, like Alex said, an interview is an opportunity to explain, and it is an opportunity in its best form to like clarify things, and to like, if there was something, let's pretend that there was something like a rumor, right? Or somebody was like, this person did this thing. If you didn't do interviews and you just were like living on social media, you're not able to like defend yourself or something, you can't, you're just kind of like out there, and then other people are writing about you, or, or you're like publicly feuding through words that people are seeing. But an interview is a conversation, and you can get through any kind of like disagreement or confusion, but in a peaceful way.
And I think that every single person in the world, individual artist, it doesn't really matter, I think wants to control the narrative of who they are, you know? So just in like a very natural way, like if you see yourself represented in a certain way, you want to say, well, that's not who I am. I know who I am, you know? So I think that, but that's just a part of life. It can't be avoided. But I think being able to control our narrative through our honesty is also something that we enjoy.
Mm-hmm. It seems difficult, though, especially when you're talking about your creative process, because it seems like we were sort of talking about earlier, like if you're not really intellectualizing creativity, then it's like, what is there really to talk about in some way?
It's true in a certain regard. And there are people who are like really good. I've heard other people's interviews and they're so good at like intellectualizing what they do. And it's really interesting. And they have like, you know, 1 million books and they remember all the lines of poems they read that like had a huge impact on them, and their voices are great, and their, you know, like their speaking voices are great, and it's like you're just in their brain and their world. But I think we're more like children who have, you know, a lot of intense feelings. We're adults, but we also have huge kids inside of us, you know, and we think about what we do, but we also are kind of just super instinctual, a little impatient and forgetful. Like we do like not remember every single moment that had a profound impact on us. It's like, it's almost impossible. It's like in order to live, you kind of just have to live and like break through the walls. And like, I can't write everything down. And I wish I had a better memory. I really do.
And just like another way of thinking of interviews, I just thought of this, you know, like your first question, what were you guys going for when you made your first record? And our answer of, we weren't going for anything. We were just being ourselves and letting whatever was there come out. If one person listens to this and that changes their artistic approach, then the interview was completely worth it.
Yeah. And then with the new album, Once Twice Melody, you released it in 4 chapters. How did that all sort of take shape?
Generally, when we, you know, are finished a previous record and we're starting into a new world of things we're inspired by, we have a lot of little things laying around. There are little blips recorded here or there. So this time we had a ton of these little things, maybe 30, and we just naturally started working on them and having them evolve into various songs. So it was so much material, more than we're used to having. And somewhere along the way, it became the 22 best songs, that kind of thing. And we were working on them steadily over a couple of years. And as we started getting closer to the vision of the whole record, at one point we went to narrow it down to like a normal record length, maybe, 45 minutes or something like that. Mm-hmm. By choosing just the best, I'm doing air quotes, the best songs. But when we did that, it didn't feel like the record anymore. It didn't have the facets that delivered the vision, and it didn't feel like a true measure of the kind of artistic space we were in. So that's when we started to think, oh, this is a double LP, which we'd never done before. And that was really exciting to us. So as we started to refine that and try to make sequencing is something that's very, very important to us, and we spend a long time on sequencing. As we started to make the sequence, we started really thinking of it in record sides because we're big vinyl fans. So we started thinking, okay, side A, side B, side C, side D, and thinking of it as that. And when you do that, you want each one to be between 18 and 22 minutes long for sound quality. So that these became the kind of navigating limitations, and we started to think of each side as having a start and an end. And then once you had the start and the end, you sort of filled in the middle, and these kind of individual little stories came out of it. And then that one day became the chapter idea. Oh, let's call them chapters because it's very interesting. And that it was all evolving at the same time. So, okay, so that came first. So that we eventually had our songs selected and these chapters selected. And then later on, we had the idea, because of streaming being the dominant way that people listen to music now. Oh, let's release them one at a time. So it almost feels like a periodical in the roll up to the final physical release. And it just felt really exciting to us. And it felt like it was also true to the development of the record in a way.
Yeah. I've seen some other groups have been doing that too, like Brockhampton did that, Denzel Curry, where people are putting out projects in sort of like chunks instead of one full project. Does it have to do with like people's attention spans? Like what's the thinking like as far as streaming platforms?
The streaming allows you to put the music out quickly. And it allows you more liberty so you don't have to wait as long. The other thing is that we don't see them as chunks like EPs, even though like Spotify says EP, we don't think of it as EP, but there's no like chapter word for that platform or side, every platform, Apple, Spotify, they all have different little things they can provide for you. And they're not doing it the same way. So this was just really about being more creative and more filmic and more cinematic and more literary and all that. So it's just been...
Yeah.
Alex's explanation is great, but there's also the side to it where it's just kind of something we've always wanted to just be able to put something out. And this was one way of being able to do that.
Was this the first album that you guys produced?
Yeah, it's not the first one we've produced because we've been essentially producing Beach House from the beginning, not to sound totally arrogant, but that is the truth. And we have worked with producers, but our relationship with them has always felt like Chris Cody or Sonic Boom. It's the feeling is co-production because they have their own skill sets and their wisdom and we get things from them. But ultimately, I do feel like we've always been at the helm.
Well, yeah, I mean, like just from like a logistics standpoint, no one has ever had influence on our arrangements, the instruments we use, the arrangements of the songs, the lyrics, the sounds. It's all completely ours, and we never wanted anyone to have any say on that kind of stuff, So production has always been something that comes in right at the end and just really helps us get across the finish line because it's just having another voice, another person there is really helpful and really lovely. And so us producing by ourselves this time wasn't so much a like definitive choice. It maybe would have happened without the pandemic, but it was also like the pandemic was like, look, no one can travel, no one can get in a plane. Just do it ourselves.
The best part about working with other people is like the contributions that they bring to you that are their own things that you would never think of, right? So like it's like we don't want to be told things by somebody about things we deeply know and we're not going to mess with. Like for example, like the arrangement of something or the lyrics or like Alex said, there's things that are not quite up for question.
Right.
But the times we've worked with other people, great things came out of those little moments because they brought something that we did not and could not do ourselves. And that's the best moment in like working with a producer or co-produce, whatever you want to call and however you want to use the word produce, whatever that means, it means something different to every artist because some people don't know at all what they're doing and they need help. And so it's just, everybody's different. But our best times with other people have been when we didn't think of it ourselves. And thank you for that help. Thank you for teaching us about this new microphone or new like gear, like Sonic Boom has an incredible life experience and knowledge and made beautiful records and was such a wonderful person to work with on Seven, and Chris Cody, the years we spent with him, he's amazing at recording. It's just, you get knowledge from people. And that's the most beautiful part of working with somebody else. It's less about like the producing that they do. It's more about like the energy and the information and the knowledge that they bestow.
So it would be sort of like choices about gear and possibly choices about performance. Is that how it would work? Like when you're working with another producer?
It's like smaller and like more like instantaneous things that occur. Like, oh, we should use like, I don't know.
I think honestly, it's hard to sum it all up. Every record is really, really different, So we'd have to go record by record. I mean, we didn't have a producer on our first two records. So actually, that thing in our bio is wrong.
It's just one of those sentences. It's just one of those sentences we wrote. And like, we probably should have just like
not
written duh or something,
Yeah. And also the word producer is another one of these words. Produced or producer is one of these giant words that means something different for everyone and for every situation. So it's kind of an annoying word, not because producers are annoying, but because it's very confusing what you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm just always interested what goes on and what a producer actually does. And I know there's a whole range. Like in hip hop, a producer is the person making the beat.
Oh yeah, it's different in every genre or
I think it's not even
world.
by the genre. I think it's just down to the person and to the situation. It's different, you know?
Mm-hmm.
There should be other ones like, chair sitter, food bringer.
I think sometimes like the best thing a producer can do is nothing, you know, like recognizing that they don't have anything to offer and something's already perfect, you know, rather than having like an ego and thinking they have to add something, you know? So it's like the role that is played is even different down to the minute.
And I think that is probably like our best combo with a person with the P word would be like, they're either going to be confirming something we already know or like enabling us to have, yes, you guys are right, you should probably do that. Like, so, you know, it's just that little bit of a bouncing board. And I think that's the best. I think we could probably just leave it at that. Like, I think that's the best way it works for us. The P word.
The P word. Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time for talking. It was so much fun.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks to Beach House for breaking down their creative partnership and the inspiration behind their new double album, Once, Twice, Melody. You can hear the new album and all of our favorite Beach House songs on a playlist at brokenrecordpodcast.com. You can follow us on Twitter at Broken Record. Broken Record is produced with help from Leah Rose, Jason Gambrell, Ben Tolliday, Eric Sandler, and Jennifer Sanchez, with engineering help from Nick Chafee. Our executive producer is Mia Lobel. And if you like the show, please remember to share, rate, and review us on your podcast app. Our theme music's by Kenny Beats. I'm Justin Richmond.